money still feels strangely personal, not practical. Like every receipt quietly says something about who you are. You can earn more now. Still, a small purchase can stir an old embarrassment you cannot logically explain. That feeling is shame, quiet shame, the kind that whispers you should want less and take up less. It shows up softly. You hesitate before buying basics, then judge yourself harder than you would judge anyone else. By the end, this feels clearer, not because you are broken, but because this pattern has a history. Growing up without money teaches more than caution. It teaches your body to treat scarcity like a verdict. So spending is rarely just spending. It can feel like exposure, risk, selfishness, or proof you never became safe. Here is the early insight. Shame is not about amount. It is about what money once meant around you. Maybe bills arrive like storms. Maybe adults went quiet, sharp, or tired. Maybe every need felt badly timed. Children do not analyze conditions. They absorb atmospheres, and when money is tense, they often turn tension into identity. That is why success does not erase it. A better paycheck can sit beside the same old flinch. You might check your balance after buying coffee, not for survival, but for emotional punishment disguised as responsibility. Or you fill an online cart, then close it. Relief comes first, then sadness because denying yourself feels familiar. You may even hide harmless purchases, not because anyone is policing you, but because being seen wanting feels dangerous. This is not irrational. It is learned protection. When resources felt scarce, invisibility often felt safer than desire. A child notices patterns quickly, which requests cause stress, which moments made a parent sigh, freeze, or snap. Then the child adapts beautifully. Asking feels risky, so they need less. They become easy to afford. Years later, that adaptation looks responsible, but underneath, it can be grief-shaped like maturity. Because wanting was never just wanting. It was connected to stress, conflict, disappointment, or the fear of burdening someone. You learn to measure yourself by cost, not your true cost, but the emotional cost of needing anything. So even now, receiving can feel heavier than giving. Gifts, help, generosity, they can awaken old discomfort instead of ease. You might over-explain cheap choices, or apologize for expensive ones. Either way, money becomes a stage for self-justification. Sometimes the shame hides inside competence. You become the careful saver, the planner, the person who never slips. Other times it hides inside spending. One exhausting day, you buy relief. Then guilt arrives and calls it failure. Different behaviors, same ache underneath. A fear that money will reveal something unlovable, careless, needy, or small. If home felt unpredictable, control becomes precious. That is why tiny purchases can trigger surprisingly big emotions. Not because the item matters so much, because control does. Because enoughness once felt fragile and easily taken away. Some children heard direct messages. We cannot afford that, so put it back. Even wanting started to sound irresponsible. Others heard quieter lessons, a tightened jaw at checkout or silence after asking. A worried voice carried through doors. Children rarely blame the system. They blame themselves first. It feels safer to believe you asked wrong. That is how quiet shame begins. Not as drama, more like a background rule. Do not create extra weight. And because you were young, that rule sank deep. It attached itself to groceries, gifts, dreams, and comfort. Maybe you noticed your parents skip meals. Maybe you watched them choose your needs over theirs. Love felt expensive. So now, buying for yourself can feel disloyal, as if comfort should still be earned through deprivation first. Maybe your family praised frugality like morality. Wasteful people were bad people. Needing more meant weak character. Then money never stayed neutral. It became tangled with goodness. Every purchase asked, are you sensible or selfish today? Or maybe shame came from comparison. You saw what others had, then learned not to mention what you lacked. School trips, birthdays, shoes, lunch money. You became skilled at acting unbothered before anyone could notice your disappointment. that performance can survive into adulthood. You stop wanting out loud. You keep preferences small enough to defend. And the strange part is this: people may see you as low maintenance, wise, or disciplined, never noticing the ache. Because shame is excellent at dressing well. It can wear humility, caution, generosity, or impressive self-control. But underneath, it still asks the same question: am I too much for money to hold? That question changes how you move. It shapes who you date, how you celebrate, and what rest feels allowed. You may stay too long in hard jobs. Stability matters, but shame often says struggle is the price of safety. You may resist being celebrated: raises, gifts, praise, nicer things. Part of you braces, as if comfort attracts loss. This is where the psychology gets tender. Shame keeps confusing circumstances with identity and survival strategies with personality. Growing up without money was an environment. Children often turned that environment into identity. I am too needy, too much. When that happens, adulthood becomes a constant translation project. You are living present moments through old meanings. A grocery bill becomes a morality test. A vacation becomes proof you are reckless. A gift becomes a debt. Even abundance can feel suspicious. If life gets softer, part of you waits for punishment, correction, or collapse. That is why peace may feel unfamiliar. Not unwanted, just untrusted. Your system learned that relief could disappear quickly. So you rehearse worst-case scenarios. You check, postpone, brace, minimize, not from drama, but from old training. And here is the exhausting part. You may look functional outside while negotiating permission to exist comfortably. If this is landing deeply, pause there. Not to fix it yet, just to notice how familiar it feels. What money moment quietly embarrasses you most? Spending on yourself, receiving help, wanting better, or admitting fear? If you want, share that in the comments. Someone else is probably carrying the same silence and needs words. Sometimes naming a hidden money feeling helps it loosen, and sometimes your honesty becomes relief for another person. Now, back to what sits underneath. Shame survives when it stays vague. Clarity is what begins to shrink it. The deeper wound is rarely just lack. It is what lack taught you about your place in the room. Maybe you learned others got to want first. Maybe comfort belonged to people who were luckier or less worried. That lesson can create adult overcompensation. You become hyper-responsible, hyper-independent, almost allergic to needing support. Because needing once felt expensive, and if being expensive felt dangerous, then self-sufficiency starts looking like worth. But this has a hidden cost. You may deny softness because it feels risky and undeserved. That is why some people feel guilty resting. A calm afternoon can feel strangely wrong when struggle became your proof. Or guilty upgrading anything. Better sheets, shoes, better food. Not because they are wrong, but because they feel like excess. Quiet shame also distorts time. You can spend years waiting to feel secure enough to deserve ordinary pleasure. But enough is slippery when shame runs the scale. It keeps moving the line because the issue was never math. It was meaning. What safety, goodness, and deserving meant. Money had carried fear for too long. And meanings can outlive circumstances by decades. That is why your adult life can feel hijacked by younger conclusions. One conclusion may sound like this: relaxing means losing everything. Enjoying means carelessness to you. Another sounds gentler but cuts just as deep. People like me should be grateful, not comfortable. See how shame shrinks possibility. It does not merely fear loss, it fears being seen having enough. Because being seen with more can wake old loyalties, to family struggle, to the self that survived it. So part of healing is emotional. It is not only tolerating more money, it is tolerating a new identity. A self who can choose without apology. A self who can enjoy without rehearsing disaster. A self who takes space. That can feel unnerving at first. Not because it is wrong, but because unfamiliar safety often resembles danger. When you grew up bracing, ease can feel suspicious. Your body may call it reckless before your mind does. So be careful with self-judgment here. What you call overreacting may actually be old protection arriving on schedule. And protection always has a reason. Even when it outlives usefulness, it began by helping you endure something hard. That matters because compassion opens doors shame never could. Shame only tightens. Understanding creates room to choose differently. Maybe the first shift is this simple. When guilt rises around money, ask what story just got activated. Not what number is true. What story is speaking? The old one says wanting makes you dangerous or disappointing. A newer story sounds quieter. My needs do not make me a burden. My comfort is not betrayal. You do not have to fully believe it yet. Sometimes repeating a kinder truth is how belief catches up. Because the goal is not becoming careless. It is becoming less ashamed of being human inside money. Human means wanting comfort sometimes. Human means feeling scared sometimes. Human means wishing ease arrived without guilt attached. And human means carrying childhood into adulthood in ways you did not choose. That is common, not brokenness. If shame told you to shrink, the answer is expansion, not extravagance, just allowing life to fit you better. That might mean noticing the apology in your thoughts, the instant defense, the reflex to explain every small pleasure. It might mean letting one good thing be simple, no speech, no justification, no inner courtroom after. Or noticing when fear appears after peace, not because peace is unsafe, but because peace is unfamiliar territory. This is the quieter kind of courage, not chasing more, but learning not to punish yourself for having enough today. And if enough still feels distant, be gentle there too. Shame hates gradual change, but change is often gradual. The quiet shame did not appear overnight. It was repeated, absorbed, rehearsed. So its softening may also take repetition. But repetition is not failure. It is how new emotional truths become believable enough to live inside. You may still feel the old sting sometimes. The goal is not erasing it, only recognizing it sooner. Sooner means more choice. More choice means less automatic shame. And less shame leaves more room for actual self-respect. That self-respect does not come from perfect behavior. It grows when you stop treating survival habits like character defects. Because you were adapting, not failing. Surviving, not proving weakness. Learning from pressure, not revealing some permanent flaw. Maybe that is the deepest relief. Your relationship with money did not come from nowhere. It came from somewhere understandable. Understanding will not rewrite childhood, but it can stop childhood from secretly narrating every purchase, desire, and decision. So the next time guilt rises, slow down kindly. Ask, is this about today or something much older? That tiny pause matters. It interrupts the inheritance. It reminds you a feeling can be old without being final. If this touched something true for you, say it below. Your words might name what someone else never said. And if this understanding helps you breathe easier, stay close. There is more here for silent parts, money-shaped. Subscribe if you want more gentle clarity like this. Turn on the bell so the next insight finds you. Not because you need fixing, because understanding changes the tone of your inner world, and that changes everything slowly. You were a child in an atmosphere. You made meaning the best way you could. That deserves compassion now. And the adult you are becoming can choose new meaning. Not all at once, just one interpretation at a time. Maybe enough was never only a number. Maybe enough is the moment you stop confusing old shame with present truth. Because you were never too much to need. You were taught to feel costly. That is not the same thing. And maybe your real wealth begins here. Not in numbers first, but in no longer feeling ashamed to exist.